Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds, always celebrating authors, comics, and stories. And on this episode, I am delighted to be peering into the creative space of author Paul Kirchner. Paul, thank you for jumping in and joining.
I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Glad to have you. I'll mention a couple of works that people might know you for that are out there in the world of creating, and then we'll sort of roam through some questions. So there is The Bus, Awaiting the Collapse,
Mhm.
Murder by Remote Control, and then my favorite title, I believe, just because I love the art reference, Hieronymus and Bosch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any big titles that are some of your favorites that I missed in that lineup?
Did you mention Murder by Remote Control? That one. There was a graphic novel I did with young Willem van de Wettering.
Oh
That
yes, yes, yes. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I enjoy that one. Enjoy the storytelling that you do there, and curious about that interplay of comics and prose, and what that's like for you.
yeah. I always think visually first, and only add words where they're kind of necessary. I mean, I started out when I was creating my own stories, really doing wordless stories, and
Hmm.
kind of my impulse, but not that that's necessarily the right way to do it, but or the only way, but uh, I, I I kind of like that, you know, uh, visual storytelling rather than too many too much expository material.
Yeah, yeah. It's that balance, right, of how much to describe, how much to not describe, and then in the visual, it works either way, and you get to take it in.
Yeah. Well, I think if I mean personally, if a comic, and I have to say I have seen this, if you look at a graphic novel and it's mainly the copy that carries the stories, and when you're seeing a bunch of heads back and forth, I
Hmm.
think does this really need to be a graphic novel? I mean, if there's not a strong visual element to the story, could have been a novel, or
Yeah.
there has to be some reason that the pictures that there are. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of creative process, any other, you said you tend to start with the visual, but any other sort of creative rituals or idea generating techniques that you engage with?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I mean, I often do uh, focus on a visual idea. Well, I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the Dope Writer strip. I do one page strip every month for High Times magazine.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
within that page, I have to make it visually interesting. I have to construct a story that pays off with some kind of gag. Get some humor into it. And I usually do like to think of a strong visual to anchor it. But sometimes the the idea, the verbal concept of the story comes first, and then I find a visual to work with that, rather than the other way around.
Hmm.
And with something like the bus, uh, that has to start with a concept, and I guess one of the things that makes the bus less uh, enticing to me to sit down and work on is that it involves a lot of repeated elements, whereas Dope Rider, I can really just go crazy with it, do whatever I feel like drawing. There's virtually no limitations.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. What initially connected you with comics and the written word?
Well, I always liked drawing and writing, and when I was in high school, I was a comic book fan, like others. It was early days of Marvel. I kind of felt, I saw some of those first superhero Marvels when I was a kid in the early '60s,
Hmm.
and as I got farther along in high school and was deciding where I wanted to go after school, I got into the Cooper Union Art School in New York, and that had several attractions for me. In that, for one thing, it was free at that time, which meant that New York was not that expensive then. With a part-time job, I was able to support myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the East Village, and I was very fascinated by the whole counterculture scene, which was still quite alive in 1970. The Fillmore East was still open, the Electric Circus still had a few years left. And New York was where the comics were, the East Village it was only when I got to New York that I really became aware of the possibilities. I saw the undergrounds. It was my first exposure to them. I got a part-time job in a comic book store, one of the first ones that opened in the city. And, got to see the European comics, all kinds of stuff. They all influenced me.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a particular influence or a particular aesthetic that you hope readers notice or take away from what you share?
Well, it's really the surrealism is what I gravitate toward. Uh, I like surrealism. I like and Dobra. I like some sort of fantasy elements. I guess
Hmm.
humor. I tend to not like to go into the dark places in my comics, especially now. I mean, to me, drawing is it's my happy place. It's my
Yeah.
place where I go to feel good. And it's funny to me that when I go to I was just at MoCA this past weekend, and you mentioned Hieronymus and Bosch. Somebody
Hmm.
came up my table. I sold out, but there was still maybe one or two copies left. And he said to me, "I've been walking around the show, and everything I see is so dark and depressing." And he said, "I keep asking people, what's funny here? What can I buy that'll make you laugh?" And he said, a couple of people said, "Go buy that Hieronymus and Bosch. It's funny." So here
Yeah.
I am. I told him I was very happy to hear that. That was my object, you know.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Well, you have to find the joy, right? And it's called comics for a good reason in that way too, I'm sure.
I mean, I understand that different people have different whatever it is they feel they want to work out on paper. I can't judge that, but
Yeah.
I'm just talking my own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's space there for all kinds of creating and all sorts of emotions, experiences. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You
go
okay?
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
I was just thinking that you were asking me a little earlier about the creative process, which is something that I think a lot about, because I think for all of us, it is kind of a mystery that, I talked about words and images, and certainly I might read a thought, a sentence in a book, and it kind of sparks an idea.
Hmm.
But there's such a strong subconscious element to the creative process where it's non-rational. You'll be sitting and it's just something will pop into your head and you think like, oh, wait a minute, I think I can work with that. I think and you don't really know where it comes from. But I think you also have to have kind of primed yourself to notice and grab onto these odd little thoughts
Hmm.
and not, it's kind of like when you wake up. I know, at least me, I wake up in the morning and I have the remnants of whatever I was dreaming about, and 2 minutes later I can't remember it at all.
Yeah.
But if it were a good idea for a story, I would have to grab that and get it, write it down and make sure I didn't lose it. And then I think there's a combination of the interaction of the subconscious and the conscious rational mind,
Hmm.
which is key because you can have an idea, but you have to then process it rationally. You have to say, wait a minute, is this going to make sense to other people? It makes sense to me, but why? Is it a generally relatable joke or concept? So and then, part of taking a piece of paper and blocking out an idea and seeing if you can pay off a gag, that's pretty rational. You're really thinking, what do I need to show? What should I leave out? What should I put in? And then I, I've often found that when you're drawing, it seems that again your subconscious mind starts kicking in. Well, you'll actually think, okay, I'm going to draw this thing, and then something in your head says, wait a minute, it would be funnier if you did this. And
Right.
some kooky idea pops up, and you think, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And so the actual act of drawing, of trying to work something out on paper, I think opens a channel to the subconscious. And I don't know, the whole process kind of fascinates me, because I feel like you have to, for example, I have to produce a Dope Rider comic strip for everyone for High Times.
Hmm.
So if I'm lying in bed, not asleep yet, I'm thinking, think of a think of an idea, think of an idea. I'm priming it. I'm like setting out bait or something. You know.
Hmm.
Whereas if well, for example, you mentioned the Hieronymus and Bosch book.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I'm going to do a sequel to that. I don't have any plans for that. So as a result, ever since I wrapped it up, I haven't had a single other idea. I mean, I haven't. I sort of said to my subconscious, "Okay, well, let's put that aside for now.
Right, right.
I have more urgent business for you." And I don't know if everybody relates to the inside of their brain that way, but that seems to be right. Another thing is actually just to expose myself to, really different influences, to look at
Mhm.
Japanese, really good anime, or, uh, just to go on Google Images and just look at, strange art and all this kind of stuff. It always just gets you thinking in a slightly different way, because I think we
Mhm.
all tend to, you know, t- tend to start working in certain patterns. You got to kind of jolt yourself out of it a little bit. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's interesting and fascinating to think about. Putting out bait, and I'm always impressed with the uh, I don't know if grind is the right word, but certainly that repetition of having to come up with a comic strip, on a regular basis, and to just kind of be in that creative tread in that way.
yeah, yeah, and you don't want to. You always want to do something different. You don't want to just repeat yourself or something. I mean, it's it's a challenge, but I hope I can keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
I've left comics for a period, um, when I had children. I had to start making more money, and I started getting work in the toy business, and then eventually in advertising, and then I was doing some magazine illustration. But when that work began drying up, and then I accepted a job at an ad agency, full-time job for 6 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
After that was over, I still continued to do storyboards, but so that ended about uh, 12 years ago or so, and I got back into comics. And at the time, I thought, I wonder if I can still get back into it, back into the saddle, because I've been doing just not, really went off in a different direction, but I soon found myself very happily doing this stuff. And, you know, it's, uh, it's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. So what has your creative attention at the moment? What has your wheels turning?
You mean outside of my own work, or?
I was thinking within your own work, but it can actually
Oh,
be
well,
outside influences as well.
primarily Dope Rider. I'm working on a page right now. I'm inking it. Um, I'm working on more bus strips. I think I made a sort of a tactical error because I have two books of the bus out.
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I thought when I started working on a third volume, I thought, well, maybe I should just pencil them and not start inking until I know I have enough that this book is, realistically going to happen. So, you know what I mean? If I pencil 15 of them and then I was just totally out of gas, I would think, well, I guess this isn't going anywhere. So,
Right.
so I actually did pencil about 40, and now I have this daunting stack of tight cross hatching and rule lines and repetitive 1980s bus to
Mhm.
ink. And it's very easy to sort of keep that aside and work on other things. But I really got to, you know, every once in a while I get in a mood and I'll ink about three of them in a row. So hopefully that
Nice.
will get done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if I'm a listener out there and I want to see your work or I want to engage with it, are there particular spaces that you would recommend that people go to?
Yeah, I have my own website where I sell my books, which
Mm-hmm.
is just www.paulkirchner.com, which is the best place because when you sell on Amazon or eBay, it's surprising what a bite they
Yeah.
take about as big a bite as they think they can and not have you give up,
Right.
basically.
Right.
But so there's that. And as far as the dope riders, I have the dope rider blogspot.com. And after High Times has run one, I give it a few months and then I put them up. So I'm putting up about one every month, uh, just on that page. I usually don't. Sometimes I put a little commentary with it, but frankly, they kind of have to speak for themselves.
I like that. I like the work speaking for itself. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's no use if it won't. Once you put it out there, you got to shut up because you're not going to be standing over the reader's shoulder.
Right. Right. Well, did we miss anything in the talk through that you want to make sure to share as far as creative wisdom, influences, or just the joy of creating?
Yeah. Well, influences are people like Drie, Philip Drie, that
Hmm.
early influences. Uh, Mobius,
Hmm.
probably the most in terms of his vision. There's a lot of good artists that I admire, but I wouldn't say I'm influenced by them because what they're doing, you could admire someone, but what they may be doing is so different from what you're doing that
Hmm.
it's not really what you call an influence. Like early on, in my career, I was helped to get started by Neil Adams, who was a remarkable and person and a remarkable artist. But his direction was not one I could see trying to follow in that kind of realism. And superhero stuff did not appeal to me.
Hmm.
So no, I worked for a couple of years for Wally Wood as an assistant, and that for time strongly influenced my style. But when you keep working, it's a little bit like your own handwriting. Your own style eventually defines itself.
Hmm.
What we're influenced by. You look at someone like Bernie Wrightson, who obviously took after Graham Ingalls, but can't deny that he made it his own thing and took it
Yeah.
farther.
Yeah. True. Very true. As I'm rereading issues of Swamp Thing, so that's a timely reference. Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you so much for the time. Thank you
Okay.
for talking with me, and glad to have you back anytime to talk about authoring, art, creating, all of the things, and sending appreciation for your work.
Thank you very much.